you to interact and ask, answer questions as well, but also just share with me your thoughts as we are going through. So who came into law to sell? Put yes or no in the chat box. Have we any keen salesperson people on the call? I do not consider myself a keen salesperson. A couple of no's coming through there. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, have we any? Claire's laughing. Yeah, never knew this was something I'd have to consider when I was starting off. The number of people that say that to me, Philip, absolutely. And the truth is that things have changed, and you may have a marketing department, some of you will have a business development person within the organisation, within the firm. But of course, it's down to all of us to attract and retain clients. And for me particularly, I don't enjoy the sales side of things. Honestly, I don't enjoy the accountancy and finance side of things either. But they are all things as a business owner that I have had to get used to. I've had to develop my own skills or get people in to support me. So today we're going to talk about how you can attract and retain clients, and I'm hoping it will be pretty painless for you. Now, one of the things that I always talk about when I'm talking about personal brand is that it's simple, but it's not easy. So it is probably one of the most straightforward. If many of you are doing CPD seminars at the moment and webinars to get your CPD points in the bag, I would think this is probably one of the most straightforward seminars that you will come on. But I would say to actually implement it, it could be one of the most challenging. I will also argue it could be the most far-reaching for you if you embrace it. And I suppose my first tip for you is to say, rather than thinking of this as another thing you have to do, so another thing for the to-do list, which I'm sure is the length of your arm, then think of it as something that you be. Think of this as a way to show up. Think of this as a way that you go about your business on a day-to-day basis. Because actually, what we're talking about here is people buying from you. So, I mean, we all love to buy, don't we? Or many of us love to buy, but how few of us love to be sold to? So what we want to create is a brand. We want to create for you to become a brand that people want to buy into. So I just want you to think for a moment of your favourite brands. So just pop in the chat box, what is one of your favourite brands? One of mine is John Lewis. I absolutely love John Lewis. I love the fact the stores feel good. We've got a relatively new one in Leeds. I don't know if we have anybody up in Yorkshire on the call, but we've got a relatively new one in Leeds. And even the car park has a John Lewis feel to it. It feels clean, it feels tidy. I go in the store, the people are helpful, and I enjoy that experience. What brands do you love? If you would just share in the chat. I noticed on my Facebook this morning that Innocent have been commenting on Bake Off last night, and very amusing. I didn't watch Bake Off, but I ended up looking at the Innocent feed because they always engage so well with their audience. Patrick's saying that he loves Audi. Patrick, would you mind just coming off mic and telling me what you love about Audi? Putting you on the spot a little bit, but what is it that you love about Audi? And if you're able to come off mic. Well, don't worry. Solid and reliable. Thank you. And that is exactly what we look at some of these different brands. We've got Ted Baker, we've got Aldi, their Twitter feed is hilarious. Absolutely, we are seeing more and more of these brands adding personality to their communications. And what we are doing there is we are buying into an experience. We're buying into how they make us feel, and they're familiar with us. They're building a relationship, they're building rapport. And that's what we need to do as a personal brand. So you have the brand of the firm, the business that you work for, but you have your own personal brand, which sits within that organization brand. And it's the personal brand that we're going to be looking at today. So my question now to you is, what would people's experience be of you? Now, one thing I should say is that whether you realize it or not, you already have a personal brand. Jeff Bezos of Amazon says your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So that is absolutely critical. Do you know what people would say about you? And if you don't know, it's worth finding out. So you need to know what you are known for. What would your clients, if a client was recommending you, why would they recommend you? What is it that they would say about you? They might say that, like Audi, you are solid and reliable. There are worse things a lawyer could be, aren't there? So it's about knowing what it is, what your values are, what it is that people describe about you. So don't be put off by this word brand. It's about people's experience of you. It's what your reputation is. It's what your profile is. But the key thing in all this is that unless you manage this, so you have the brand, it's whether you are managing it or not, because if not, somebody else is managing it for you. And that is what I want to talk to you about for the next sort of 45 minutes or so. It's about being aware of the impact that you have and then managing that and virtually having maybe a business strategy around that. Certainly when I'm working with people one-to-one, I encourage them to have a personal brand strategy that they put into place and they work through on a regular basis. Okay, so when we think about personal branding, people say to me, well, what exactly is it? It's all right saying it's an experience, but it's three things for me. It's what you do. So there are about 20 of us on this call at the moment, and you will all have very similar technical skills. So it's what you do. So that is your CV, that is your job description. But what gets really interesting then is who you are and how you do it. And those are the things that make you stand out as a personal brand. And that's what we're looking to highlight. So it's all three areas, as you can see in the image there. You know, that's the absolute sweet spot when we communicate. This is what I do. This is who I am, and this is how I do it. And really interesting, one of the things that I've been doing this for 11 years now, and honestly, in the last 11 months, I've probably had more incoming interest into the business than I've had in the previous 11 years. And from much bigger firms, from businesses, a lot of law firms, a lot of my work is with law firms, but other firms as well. And I think there's an understanding and a realization, maybe on the back of COVID, that actually personal brand isn't a gimmick. It's not just about your beautifully curated Instagram feed. Although for some people that is part of their personal brand, but it is something that can help you and develop your business development skills. And Deloitte have done a recent survey, and they're saying that by 2030, 2/3 of all roles will be soft skill intensive. Now, you know, that's huge, isn't it? And that's saying that, you know, people will choose you not because of your technical skills, but because of the relationship that you build with them. And we're going to be exploring that a little bit more today. I prefer to call it human skills rather than soft skills. So Philip's made a comment here. I'm not particularly creative, read visuals on social media like Instagram and LinkedIn to accompany my role work. Does that hinder me? Philip, I'll come back to social media as we go through on looking at ways we communicate. We are always, a lot of us are visual, and we tend to get drawn in by a great visual. So it's about attracting people's attention very quickly. So if you can find a great visual, then that will always attract people's attention. The other thing is video. Now, I run a membership, a monthly membership, and the one thing that I hear time and time again from my members is that they dread doing video, but video is the thing that engages people time and time again. And partly because of some of the things that we're talking about here, you are able to share your expertise, but also people get a flavour of what you are like as a person, and you get that chemistry connection a little bit more on video. So I would think about the visuals. It's not about having, a social media expert might tell you otherwise. It's not necessarily about having fabulous graphics and designing something in Canva. It's about knowing what your brand message is, which we're going to come on to in a minute, and being able to communicate that effectively, whatever the platform actually. So your personal brand is so many different things. It is how you show up, it's how likable you are, it's your body language, all the things that I talk about on that list. And also, you express a lot of your personal brand by what you don't say and what you don't do. So if you're not somebody who interacts because you are shy, then that might be communicating something else about your personal brand, but we will come on to that as well shortly. So just be aware, your personal brand is all encompassing. And, you know, it's about being the best you. And the reason I put that up there is really just as a reminder, because I think quite often we all get used to what we do on a daily basis, time and time again. So every time I present on personal branding, gosh, I must have done this thousands of times now, but I always give myself a little bit of a talking to. I always go for a bit of fresh air beforehand and show up as if it's the first time I have ever presented this, because it's the first time that you have experienced it. So it's about thinking about that every time you turn up in front of a client. Somebody once said to me about Chris Evans, the ex-BBC that's now on Virgin, the presenter, and saying that how much they love him because every morning he's on that radio show. It's as if it's the first time he's experienced whatever he's telling you, and his enthusiasm and energy is palpable. And that's how we should be showing up on a day-to-day basis. And it's these small things that make a huge impact on our clients, because of course when a client turns up in front of you, the chances are it's quite a stressful and certainly a huge moment in their life, and it's remembering that. Often we're in a situation where we don't show up as our best because of our workload, because certainly over the last couple of years when there's been another agenda, hasn't there, so often. Over the last week, when some people have been struggling with grief from the loss of the Queen, everybody responds in a different way and everybody shows up in a different way. So it's being aware of that and trying in every situation to show up in the best way we possibly can, and that is in our own ability. A few years ago, just before COVID, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it must be a couple of years ago at least, because of COVID, I did some work with a law firm, and I was working with their talent pool of 8 lawyers, and they all walked in the first morning into a face-to-face training session, and the session was all about impact. And of the 8 people, only one person smiled at me, made eye contact and shook my hand. And I brought this up as I got to know them, and they said, oh, no, that wouldn't have been me. I would never be that unfriendly. But actually what happens is when we're thinking about something and we get into our own head, we don't realize that we're not always communicating as we think we are. So often when we're thinking about maybe it's a challenging client that you've got, maybe you've got some bad news to share, maybe it's something new that you're a little bit nervous about, maybe you're just under pressure and you're under time pressures, but that is communicated through our body language and our expression. So always be aware and have a hook. I once worked with somebody who suggested that you have, the key fob on your car. As you press the key fob on your car and walk into the office, then you switch into that performance mode, that best you mode. So, okay, so let's just have a look at how we show up on a regular basis. Now, some of you will prefer some statistics rather than anecdotes. Certainly my style of presenting is very much about telling stories and anecdotes, but I know some of you will like to have some statistics to back up the themes that I am sharing with you. And this is a study by a chap called Harvey Coleman. And I just want you to have a guess. So this is looking at factors affecting your success. And these are performance, your image, which I would call your personal brand, and finally your exposure, which I tend to call your visibility and capitalizing. So only 10% of career success is down to your performance. 10%. So who's surprised at that? If you just want to share in the chat, who is surprised that only 10% of career success is down to performance? Yeah, absolutely. It's just such a tiny amount. And I think we all realise in this day and age that we need to do more than the day job. I rarely meet people these days that say, Deborah, my work should speak for itself. I think a lot would like that to be the case, but I think we realise that in this online world, in this virtual world, in this connected world, we need to do so much more. And yeah, Maria, I think a lot of people think it would be 50-50. So 10% is performance, 30% is down to your image. Now, that's what I call your personal brand. So there is this misconception sometimes that your personal brand is how you show up, your image. And I'm trained in image consultancy. So yes, how you dress, how you show up is absolutely a part of your personal brand, as is your social media feed, as is your photograph. A lot of people are calling themselves personal brand photographers. So all these things make up your personal brand, and that the evidence shows is 30%, and then a huge 60% is down to exposure, is down to your visibility. Now, if you think about this for a second, it does start to make sense. If you think about, you could be the greatest lawyer the world has ever seen. If nobody knows about you, you are not going to have career success. You are not going to progress. And the whole point of personal branding, the whole point of the work I do, is to encourage my clients to be a visible expert. What I want for you, each and every one of you, is to be the front of mind person when your ideal client needs what it is that you offer. So when that moment happens to them and they need a certain type of lawyer, then it's your name that comes to mind. Or when they ask somebody, it's your name that comes to mind. And that's what we're looking for. But of course, for that, we need to be visible. And that's why, just being the best lawyer you possibly can be is not enough. So if anybody thinks that's not fair, which I often hear as well, the first rule of Harvey Coleman is nobody said it would be fair. And he says it isn't fair. It doesn't seem fair, but that is what we are hardwired to do. And it's a case of just getting used to it. Okay. So another thing that I mentioned a few minutes ago is how would people describe you? So how do people experience your brand? So I'm just going to ask you here, in the chat box, just write a word that you hope people would say about you. So if I was to put you on the spot now and say, describe your personal brand, what words, you can have a couple of words if you like, what words would people like to say about you? So Sue would like to be efficient. Sounds pretty good to me. So come on, let's have some different words. Friendly, interesting, helpful, brilliant, efficient and reliable, a little bit like the Audi, reliable, attention to detail, yeah, articulate, reliable, professional, super. So lots of words there that are great words to have as part of your personal brand. Caring. I like that one, Michelle, and we'll come on to that in a moment when it comes to connecting with clients and what it is when it comes to that experience and people experiencing you. So the other sort of tricky area of personal branding is that there's the personal brand that's in your head. So those are the words that you've just listed there. But the reality is that it's the perception and it's the personal brand that is out there that other people that experience that is absolutely critical. So why am I sharing this with you? Because some people may appear shy, but actually they think they are, sorry, some people think they are shy, but actually how they appear is disconnected. Some people may think that they are life and soul of the party, and we all know they come across as a bit of a wally. Some people may think that they are confident. We may experience that as overconfident. So it's just being aware of a potential disconnect here. And again, a client of mine a few years ago worked for a very large national firm that was floating on the stock market. And he was a finance director within one of the divisions and very capable of his job, very influential. And he was brilliant at what he did technically. But what he was put forward, or he put his name forward for a managing director role. And when it came to it, he didn't get the role. And the reason being that when it came to the panel, there were people on the panel of the panel interview that had never worked with him before, and he had no profile outside of his own division. So first of all, there's an example of that lack of visibility. But more of a concern was that when they asked for feedback from his team, they said that they didn't feel he displayed leadership qualities. And this came down to the fact, so at this point I was brought in to work with him, and I'm pleased to say that now he is actually a managing director of one of the divisions. But when I chatted to his team, they said, oh, he's not interested in us. He's great at spreadsheets, he's great at finance, but he never asks about us as a team. He never knows anything about our personal life. You know, he doesn't make small talk with us. So there was this real disconnect. And when I talked to him, he was horrified. And he just said, I'm an introvert, I'm painfully shy. I find that type of small talk very, very difficult. So we worked on building those relationships. So absolutely, he came across as caring and that he was interested in them, and that he was somebody that they could trust. So you can see there was this huge disconnect there that had a real negative impact on his career. He felt he came across as shy, others felt he came across as rude and disinterested. So find out, get feedback if you don't know how you come across. 3 great things to ask people, because if you say, what's my personal brand like? How do you experience me? Most people will be pretty positive. But if you're going to get feedback that's constructive, you need to know how you really come across. Some great questions to ask. What am I good at? So what should I continue doing? What should I stop doing to make more impact? And what one thing should I start doing to create more impact? And if you ask those 3 things, and accept what comes back gracefully and graciously, and work on it then. And I call this the gold dust. When I work with people one-to-one, we do 360 feedback, and it's anonymous. 95% of it is absolutely wonderful, and then this 2, 3, 5% is could do better. And actually that's the gold dust, because once you know about that, you can do something about it. So find out what your personal brand is out in the real world. So if there is one slide that you are going to take note of today, this is the one. This is the key slide. This is my impact method that I use with people, whether I'm working with them one-to-one, whether I'm presenting, whether I'm running a workshop. And this is something that I've developed over the 11 years. And these are the 5 key areas that we are going to look at. You need to have clarity of your brand message. You need to be able to communicate that effectively. You need to connect with people. You need to build the relationships. You need to be able to capitalize. So that's that visibility piece. You need to get your message out there so you are that visible expert. And the key thing with any branding exercise is that you need to be consistent. So John Lewis in Leeds is the same as John Lewis on Sloane Square at Peter Jones, at the same as John Lewis in Blue Water or wherever you may be. We know what we're going to get with that experience, and people need to know they'll get the same experience with you every single time. Okay. So let's just have a look at clarity. Why are you doing this? I want you to think about clarity in 3 areas. Clarity of your goals. So we've already said this is about attracting more clients. This is about having a really great reputation and profile so that people recommend you. No longer is the solicitor for life. I remember when my husband and I bought our first house and we went to my parents' solicitor. That doesn't happen as much these days, does it? People go on to Facebook, they ask friends, they go onto social media, and there is so much more fluidity. There isn't that long-term relationship quite the same. But if you can build that relationship so that people stay with you and even become advocates for you, that is absolutely what we are looking for. So you need to know your goals. What is it that you are trying to achieve? You need to know what your personal brand message is. So what is it that people will get when they interact with you? So that goes back to that, what you do, which is the technical side, but who you are. So that's your personality, your values, who you are as a person, what are your experiences in life, what are your beliefs? And what are your behaviors? So that's the 3rd thing. How do you do it? So are you somebody who is attention to detail like Michelle? Are you somebody who's reliable like Alison and Jane and Debbie? How do you show up? Are you larger than life? Are you somebody who is a team player? Are you a leader? How do you show up? And you can see that this takes a lot of reflection. So I don't expect you to have the answers to this now, but it might be worth, as a result of today, just taking some time out and having a look what your values are, asking people how you show up. A lot of the feedback that you will get will be around your behaviours and people's experience of you. And then the other third area that you need to have absolute clarity on is your audience. Who is it that are your ideal clients? Because you don't, we've already said we don't like selling, we don't like the business development side. Well, the worst thing is trying to sell to somebody who isn't your ideal client, because that will be incredibly difficult. So it's about finding those people that are a perfect match for your firm and particularly for you. And from that, it's not just about the demographic of your client, but it's also about knowing their pain points as well, what keeps them awake at night, and being able to articulate that in every single piece of communication so that they understand that you understand them. That is the thing. People buy with their emotions rather than their head. This person understands me and will look after me. That's what they want to know. And that's what we need to be able to communicate. And you can see if we just list on our LinkedIn page all our qualifications, then there is nothing for people to buy into there. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment when we come on to connecting. And then it's about communicating. So just for a second, just in the chat box, just type in there different ways that you communicate on a day-to-day basis. So let's just try and get a list of ways that we communicate on a day-to-day basis. Just have a think about this for a moment. So absolutely. So we've got email, by phone, email, more phone. Yeah, email and phone, lots of email and phone. Speech, absolutely. Verbally. And I think it was Nicholas that said being able to articulate his message. So verbal communication is absolutely key. Kate saying face to face, absolutely. Isn't it good getting back in the room with people? Non-verbal, our body language, absolutely. It's no coincidence, you probably can't tell, but I'm actually stood up presenting and have done all the way through lockdown and working from home, because your body language communicates so much more energy when you are stood up. And a little bit going back what I talked about before, it's about connecting with your audience. FaceTime, face-to-face, Zoom meetings, yeah, good old Zoom meetings, video meetings, virtually, yeah, lots and lots of different ways we communicate. How about our energy? How about how we walk in a room? How about when we shake hands with people? How about the way we dress? How about our environment? All these different things are first impressions that we have on people, how we shake hands. Do you make eye contact with them? Do you return your calls on time? What's your voicemail message like? Can you see that the way we communicate is endless? It is every single touch point that a client or a potential client has with you. One thing I didn't mention before, because we are particularly talking about attracting more business here, but one really important audience that don't forget about is your colleagues. Because they are an audience that sometimes don't get the best side of us, but by having a good relationship and showing your best personal brand with your colleagues, they will support you. And when it comes to networking, they will be happy to refer your name. So don't forget your colleagues. That's something I should have mentioned before. So yeah, just think about the many, many different ways that we communicate. And somebody said, about body language. Now, I can't actually do this as easy unless everybody's willing. Will everybody put their cameras back on for me for a second? A little bit of interaction. If everybody can put their cameras back on for me for a second. Let's see how many of you I can see. Okay, so let's see if this will work. Everybody put the OK sign in the air for me. Okay, don't worry, Maria. We will have a go anyway. Put the okay sign in the air for me, everybody, and just place it on your chin for me. Okay. Okay, so who's got it on their chin at the moment, and who's got it on their cheek? I'm impressed, actually. You've all gone your cheek. Now, in person, most people will put it on their cheek because your body language will always speak louder than your words. So I don't know if anybody did have it on their cheek there, but try that in a room full of people. Ask people to do that for you. People will always be led by your body language. So again, when we were talking before about when you first meet a client and you may have other things on your mind and you are showing up and all the words that you are saying are, I'm here for you, I'm 100% present, I'm in the room. But we sense, don't we, when people aren't 100% engaged with us. And it's in those moments that our non-verbal communication communicates so much more than the words that we are talking about. So always be aware of your body language. When I don't know if you can see it actually, when I first came on the call, Catherine was asking me about the picture behind me, which is actually my Wonder Woman print. And that was bought for me by a client who heard me talking about Amy Cuddy and power posing. And some of you may walk into a room, some of you may present for networking purposes, some of you may have to appear in court or in chambers, and you may not be the most confident person when it comes to those difficult situations. So being aware of your body language and what you communicate in those moments is absolutely key, because you need to come across as credible and confident for people to believe in you and respect you and recommend and refer you. And I recommend you have a look at Amy Cuddy's work on power posing. So yes, our body language communicates so much about us, but Amy Cuddy discovered, it's Cuddy, she's one of the most watched TED Talks ever. She's a social psychologist at Harvard and has written a very good book called Presence as well, if anybody's interested. And she discovered that by adopting a power pose, so by standing, I don't know if I can do this here, I don't know if I'm quite on camera, but by standing in your Wonder Woman power pose for just 2 minutes, your testosterone, which is the confidence hormone, will rise by about 20%, and your cortisol, which is the stress hormone, will drop by about 20%. So this is a physical change in our bodies that will help us communicate better. Now, I do not suggest that you appear at your next appearance in chambers or at a networking event in your power pose, but it lasts for about 20 minutes. So just find yourself 2 minutes beforehand to just adopt a strong power pose. You can do this as well. And Emma's saying she's been Wonder Woman power posing for years, and I know it's something over the years and years I've talked about. It's the one thing that people say to me time and time again. This has made a huge difference to my confidence and my impact. It sounds a bit crazy, and I've only got a moment to share it with you today, but have a look at Amy Cuddy's work. It really does make a difference. Okay, thank you for that, Emma. So I talked about communication, but what about connection? Connection is the way we communicate with every single person. It's about really building trust and respect. Now, there was some research, and funnily enough, this is Amy Cuddy with another partner as well, looked at what is it when we first meet somebody, what is it that we are analysing in that first impression. You have less than a second to make a first impression. And the two things that we are looking at are trust and respect. And actually, when we communicate these come across as warmth and competence. And there was some research done in the States, and everybody came back and people were asked, what do you think is more important, warmth or competence in a business environment? And of course, everybody thought that competence in a business environment was more important. Now, actually, what the studies show is that, yes, of course, you need to be competent. You need to be a great lawyer. But first, you need to build trust. And that's where connection comes in. That's why we do the small talk. That's why we ask everybody about the weather. That's why we talk about holidays. That's why we talk about football and sport, or admire somebody's handbag. All those things that we do that I know can be quite British, but we're building relationships. We're trying to find common ground with somebody. It matters because you're building trust. If you don't build trust first, and I think for lawyers, this is so, so important, people can feel manipulated. So that trust is absolutely key before you start to communicate your credibility. And some of you will have heard of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's been around for many, many years, nearly, well, 90 years. And Dale Carnegie said, we all walk around with a sign over our head saying, make me feel important. And that's, again, something within every single person. I think it was Mother Teresa that said, let every person be better or feel better for having interacted with you. And that is within every single one of us, the power to do that. Every potential client, every person that you meet at a network event. It's the Maya Angelou quote, people will forget what you did, they will forget what you said, they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is what connection is all about, truly listening and being in the moment. Okay. Then it comes on to the capitalizing bit, and this is the bit from experience that nobody likes. We don't like blowing our own trumpet. We don't like doing videos. We don't like being visible on social media. So you need to find what works for you. Now, I know from probably 75% of my clients are within the legal profession, and I know this is an area that many people find very, very difficult. But start small and find something that works for you. Now, you know, my place is on a stage. I love being on the stage. I think it's the frustrated performer in me. It didn't come easy. When I set up my own business, it was something that I had to really work on. I had many years as a media manager in sport, and it was always my job to get the right person in front of the camera rather than me. So I've had to really develop these skills, but I love being on a stage. Now, if you are somebody that is happy to stand on a stage, you can reach a great audience and share your visible expertise very, very effectively. So if this is something that you feel works for you, do more of it. Spot those opportunities to get in front of network groups. You know, I was working, I did quite a bit of work with the Junior Law Society in Leeds, and I was speaking for them on Tuesday evening last week. And again, I'm saying to them, this is an area that you can develop earlier in your career. Develop your presentation skills if this is something that you feel will benefit you. It's not for everybody. If not, find what does work for you. So obviously during lockdown, I couldn't get on a stage. I continued to present online, but I also developed a podcast. And that for me has been a great opportunity to be able to share how I work. So remember, it's not just what you do, but who you are and how you do it, but also to be able to share the stories and the personal brand of my guests. So again, it reaches a different audience, and it may be that you don't have the facilities to set up your own podcast, but there are so many podcasts out there that you could appear as a guest on. So it might be something that's geographical, that's local to your region. It may be something that's specific to your area of law, or it may be something that you are passionate about. It may be that you are passionate about gardening and you go on a gardening podcast, and of course there are plenty of lawyers or people, clients that potential clients that need lawyers, and because they heard you on a gardening podcast and they love gardening, they might just come and work with you because you've got that connection with them. I know that's a little bit of a plucked out of the air example, but that is how it works. So look at different ways to get in front of your potential audience. They're all human beings at the end of the day. And look to network. I did some work a few years ago with DLA Piper, and I always remember one of their partners saying that their highest fee earner was actually in litigation, and she was a litigation case waiting to happen because she was such a good fee earner. She went through rapid fee earner, and she went through the cases at great speed, but she never took the time out to build a network and build relationships. And as it was the managing partner said at the time, she's a disaster waiting to happen in some ways because things go wrong and she has got nobody to fall back on when that happens, either within the organisation or externally. She was very much a lone wolf, and they were really concerned about this. So whereas she got this strength on from one point of view, as with so many strengths, when we follow them to the extreme, it can become too much and can actually let us down. So really think about your network. And if you're not somebody who enjoys formal networking, I was talking to a young lawyer this week who goes to BNI. Now, to me, I think BNI is incredibly formal. It certainly doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of people. So if you're new to networking, I think BNI is perhaps the last place you would start out. You would find somewhere that's a little bit more informal, but she loves it. So it's finding what works for you. And if there are people out there that can help you raise your profile, be a cheerleader. I call my advocates my cheerleaders. I have people in my network that are out there as my mini sales force, and they have absolute clarity on my personal brand and what it is and how I do it. So that when somebody says, I'm ready to step up in the business, I'm looking to be partner, I need some help with my presentation skills, they'll say, Deborah's the person that you need to speak to. So look after those advocates and have a coffee with them every now and again. Tell them what you're up to and make sure they're fully briefed on your personal brand message and the strengths that you bring. And then, as we mentioned earlier, it's about social media. I'm not going to talk at length about social media, but certainly this is an incredibly powerful way to raise your profile as a visible expert. You know, I'm not that keen on the phrase thought leader. I think it can sound a little bit arrogant, actually, but I think you can be seen as somebody who is an expert in your field, and certainly LinkedIn is a great way to do that. So if you are new to sharing on social media, look for people that you admire that are aligned with your personal brand and your personal brand message, and start to share their posts. And then when you're feeling a bit more comfortable, start to share your own opinion, maybe comment on other people's posts and share your opinion. Share latest legislation, case law, case studies where possible, that you can share how you go about your work. And also add a little bit of personality. I don't mean this is me and my dog walking down the canal on Sunday morning, or this is what I had for my breakfast. But certainly one of my clients is very senior in property. And one of the things that he's found is that by sharing his experience of going back into London since lockdown, and his personal photographs and his personal experience of, you know, going to his favourite coffee shop and it having closed down because of the impact of COVID, those are the pieces, those are the posts that get far more engagement than when he's sharing something technical about the future of property and office space and all those wonderful things that he talks about. So really think about your audience, think about connecting, think about what you share, think about the platforms that you use. Everybody should be using LinkedIn. And it's amazing. Another just quick thing on LinkedIn when we're talking about connection, always remember when you're asked to connect with somebody to put a message on there. If you're using your phone or the app version of LinkedIn, before you press connect, click on the 3 little dots and that allows you to add a message. Every single person that I ask to connect, I put a message on there, and every single person, nearly every single person that asks to connect with me, I reply with a message. And through doing that, I have had business because I've bothered to connect with them and taken a couple of minutes just to say, did I meet you when we were speaking? How can I help you further? I see we have a lot of people in contact, whatever it may be, just a line to make that connection. It goes back to how do we connect? How do we build relationships? And of course, it's about doing all this consistently. And, you know, this is the hardest part of personal branding. It's about showing up as Sally Sunshine or whoever your personal brand ego, super ego is. And sometimes it is about stepping into that performance. I'm not talking about faking it till you make it, but it's about knowing that you've got to step into a brand that people are expecting. And sometimes that can really help you at times when you're challenged. I mean, even Beyonce used to get on the stage as Sasha Fierce, didn't she? So if it's good enough for Beyonce. But joking apart, it's about knowing that message and how you want to come across and showing up as that person consistently. Because if you fake it, you won't be consistent. People will spot that there are inconsistencies. And what happens is if you get something wrong from a credibility point of view, people will forgive you. They will let you off 1 or 2 times. If you don't show consistently from a trust point of view, you're unlikely to get a second go. So that again is that building those relationships. Show up consistently. You're better to show up once a week for 20 minutes. Right, when I say that, you're better to put in 20 minutes for LinkedIn once a week and show up every single week than showing up for a week and doing 10 posts and then not showing up for 6 months. So just find some time. I often say to people, when you make that first cup of coffee, give yourself 10 minutes, scroll down LinkedIn. Is there anything that you can comment on? Is there anything that you can like? Is there anything that you can share with your network? And just use that time effectively, but consistently. Okay, and I've already hinted at this, but this is something that I truly believe in. There is a lot around personal branding, which I think makes people run a mile, that it is the fake it till you make it. It's about filters on Instagram. It's about showing up as somebody that you are not. Absolutely show up as yourself. Somebody will buy into you. People will buy into you and the way you do things and who you are. Let the others go to to find the person that works for them. There's somebody else who deliver in Yorkshire. There's only 2 of us that have been delivering on personal branding for the time that we have. Jennifer is brilliant, absolutely super, but we are very, very different people. Some people choose to work with Jennifer, some people choose to work with me, and we actually refer work backwards and forwards to each other because we are so different. Okay. And then finally, I just want you to think about this for a second. This is something that gives me sleepless nights. Some people pitch up at my office or pick up the phone and say, Deborah, I've heard about your work. I've been meaning to get in touch. I've got my dream interview next week or my dream promotion next week, or a fantastic opportunity to speak in front of 500 people. Can you help me? Yes, I can help them, but I wish they'd got in touch 6 months earlier. This takes time. It's a little bit like the Chinese proverb, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? The best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So you really need to be taking action. So do something about this now. Small steps. This is all about marginal gains. It's not about the big things. The big things will not make you visible. It's the small things consistently. And often it's the small things that destroy a personal brand. It's not the great falls from grace like Tiger Woods. It's the small things that undermine our brand on a regular basis. So just have that absolute awareness. And just over to you, really, for the last couple of minutes. What will you do today as a result of this presentation? Let's make a commitment. What will you do differently as of today? What one thing can you take away and implement in your day-to-day being, implement in the way you do things, the way you show up, the way you connect with people? A final story from politics. Please share in the chat box what you are going to do. And I'll just share with you a final story from politics that many years ago in Victorian Britain, there was a general election. There were two candidates, Gladstone and Disraeli, and nobody knew who would win. And the press got wind of the fact that they had both taken the same woman out for dinner. And they interviewed her and said, what was your experience? Who do you think will win? And they interviewed this lady and she said, well, when I dined with Mr. Gladstone, I felt that I was dining with the cleverest person in Britain. And they said, wow, that's pretty impressive. And they said, what about Mr. Disraeli? And she said, when I dined with Mr. Disraeli, she said, I felt like I was the cleverest, most charismatic person in Britain. And Disraeli went on to win the election for his ability to connect with people and how he made them feel. And that is in the power of every single one of us. Okay, thank you so much. Let's just have a quick look here. Lots of things, lots on consistency, confidence. Yeah, looking how you come across. Lots of different things here. Factoring more, social media. Yeah, Wonder Woman poses, as Emma has already vouched for. It really does make a difference. I'm just going to pop in here. Oh no, I haven't got it. Forget what I've just put in there. I've put the wrong. I was thinking it was on my previous. If anybody would like a wheel of visibility, if you want to just drop me an email, my email is on there. Gosh, I'm not doing very well here. My email isn't on there. My email is deborah@deborahogden.com. And I have a wheel of visibility, which gives you an overview of all the areas that we've looked at today. So it's deborah@deborahogden.com, and I'll share that with you. And that will just perhaps give you a starting point as well. I'm conscious we are dead on 1:30, but are there any questions that I can answer in very quickly? And if you would like to link with me on LinkedIn, by all means, if you have any questions that you think of later on today, by all means, ask me in LinkedIn. It's been really super to meet you all today. Thank you for the interaction. It makes such a difference for me as a presenter. I always love working with CILEX. I've done a lot with you over the years, and I love the interaction and the connection I get. So thank you so much, and I hope I will see you on a future event. Thank you, everybody.